You're watching Study with Sudhir. This is your digital classroom. I'm TS Sudhir. We are now looking at explanation video part 2 of the story Quality, written by John Galsworthy. I hope you have already gone through part 1, because unless you understand part 1, which kind of put this entire story in the context of the England of its times, you would not be really able to understand it. And the first part is where this entire story is being introduced. Now we will go through the rest of the story and then tell you about the major themes, because in a 20 marks question you would be expected to kind of explain in detail in order to get a majority of those 20 marks. It's not easy, or at least a 15 marks question, which may be the case in 2021. When at last I went, I was surprised to find that outside one of the 2 little windows of a shop, another name was painted, also that of a bootmaker, making of course for the royal family. So you see the contrast. These brothers never advertised the fact that they had some kind of an association with the royal family. All their boots were made to order, customized. But a part of the shop had now been let out, sold to another firm, which was advertising that they were making shoes for the royal family, for the members of the British royal family. The old familiar boots that we saw in explanation video part 1 in the first page of the story, no longer in dignified isolation. There was a certain dignity to the way they were kind of displayed on the outside of that particular shop, were huddled now in a single window. So the space in that sense had shrunk for the work of art of the Gessler brothers. This is again an important point. Right? This is an important point. Earlier there was a dignified isolation. Now they were huddled together in a single window. Please make a note of this. Inside, the now contracted well of the one little shop was more scented and darker than ever. And it was longer than usual too before a face peered down and the tip-tap of the bar slippers began. Third time the phrase the tip-tap of the bar slippers has been used. At last, which I always told you, it's a sense of rhythm. At last, he stood before me and gazing through those rusty iron spectacles said, "Mr. Isn't It?" Now, the name has not been given, right? Now, whether he has deliberately omitted the name, we don't know, or he is referring to the fact that with age, his memory is also beginning to fail him. That could be another reason why the name of the author, narrator, has not been mentioned out here. "Ah, Mr. Gessler," I stammered, "but your boots are really too good, you know. See, those are quite decent still." And I stretched out to him my foot. He looked at it. "Yes," he said, "people do not want good boots, it seems." Now, when you are using the word reproachful, it basically conveys the impression that the author under no circumstances wants to upset Mr. Gessler. And voice I hastily remarked, "What have you done to your shop?" So he's obviously very curious to know what is the reason why that other shop has come up in his space. He answered quietly, "It was too expensive. Do you want some boots?" So he doesn't want to really get into details about what happened. He said it was just too expensive. I ordered 3 pairs, though I had wanted only 2, and quickly left. I do not know quite what feeling of being part in his mind of a conspiracy against him, or not, perhaps not so much against him as against his idea of boot. So he does feel that, you know, there is something which is kind of happening which is not quite right? And it is against him, but much more so against his idea of a boot. One does not, I suppose, care to feel like that, for it was again many months before my next visit to his shop, because his boots would obviously last many months and many years. Paid, I remember, with the feeling, "Oh well, I can't leave the old boy, so here goes. Perhaps it will be his elder brother." For his elder brother, I knew, had not character enough to reproach me even dumbly. So the reproach would happen only from the younger Mr. Gessler, not from the elder one. So he kind of was aware of this nuance, this difference between the 2 brothers. And to my relief, in the shop there did appear to be his elder brother handling a piece of leather. So he's kind of happy that he's having to deal with the elder brother, not with the younger one. "Well, Mr. Gessler," I said, "how are you?" He came close and peered at me, again conveying a sense of aging. He has to peer at him in order to be able to recognize him. "I'm pretty well," he said slowly, "but my elder brother is dead." And that comes as a shock, because he thought this was the elder brother. So the aging, as I kept saying, the passage of time and aging, very important themes in this particular story, Quality. and I saw that it was indeed himself, but how aged and wan, and never before had I seen him mention his brother. Much shocked, I murmured, "Oh, I am sorry." So he's kind of taken aback. "Yes," he answered, "he was a good man, he made a good boot, but he's dead." And he touched the top of his head where the hair had suddenly gone as thin as it had been on that of his poor brother, to indicate, I suppose, the cause of death. So he's not a man of many words, and in this case he doesn't probably want to get into too many details, but he says that he could not get over losing the other shop. So that whole sense of loss, the sense of loss of losing orders, that you're not getting many orders, and even greater, the sense of losing a part of your own shop, which is a part of what their whole existence, their whole life was, their whole ecosystem, a part of it had gone, and obviously the elder brother had taken very badly to it. He could not overcome the grief and the sorrow of having lost a part of that shop. "Do you want any boots?" And he held up the leather in his hand. "It's a beautiful piece. I ordered several pairs. It was very long before they came, but they were better than ever. One simply could not wear them out, and soon after that I went abroad." So here he is doing his little bit of advertising. It's a beautiful piece, right? And his advertising in that sense is very personalized. It's very customized in that sense, just as the shoes that he manufactures. And for 1 year, the author, the narrator, is not in London. And the first shop I went to was my old friend's. So now you see, from earlier it was, he was looking up to them. Now he refers to them as his friend. So there is a difference even in the way the narrator is actually looking at Mr. Gessler. "I'd left a man of 60, I came back to one of 75. Very important line. Please use this code, that in the process of 1 year passing, the man had aged visibly by 15 years. That's something very important. Pinched and worn and tremulous. So tremulous is someone who is kind of trembling or quivering, right? Who genuinely this time did not at first know me. So memory loss also happening to an extent, right? "Oh, Mr. Gessler," I said, sick at heart, "how splendid your boots are. See, I have been wearing this pair nearly all the time I have been abroad, and they are not half worn out, are they?" So he is kind of praising his work. And he looked long at my boots, a pair of Russia leather, and his face seemed to regain steadiness. Putting his hand on my instep, he said, "Do they with you here? I had trouble with that pair, I remember," right? So he's kind of checking whether he's comfortable with this particular pair of shoes, and he said, "Oh no, they fitted beautifully. Do you want any boots? I can make them quickly. It's a slack time." So yet another time when he's kind of referring to the fact that he's not going through good times, that he is actually having a bit of problem with getting orders, and as a result of which he's kind of going through bad times business wise. Please, I want boots all round, every kind, and I'll make you a fresh model. Your foot must be bigger." And with utter slowness, he traced around my foot and felt my toes, only once looking up to say, "Did I tell you my brother was dead?" Another indication that his memory was failing. He did not remember the fact. Of course, there was a passage of time, but he did not quite remember that he had already conveyed to the narrator that his elder brother had passed away. To watch him was painful. So feeble had he grown, I was glad to get away. So he did that whole experience of actually looking at him grow so frail and weak, right, and feeble, kind of affected the narrator very much, because he had been seeing them, the brothers, from a very young age, when he was a little boy, and especially his interactions with the younger Mr. Gessler. So he felt very bad looking at him in this kind of a frail condition, right? Now, I had given those boots up, and one evening they came. Opening the parcel, I set the 4 pairs out in a row. Then one by one I tried them on. There was no doubt about it. So his workmanship, despite his age, despite the fact that his memory was failing him, nothing seemed to affect the quality of his work. In shape and fit, in finish and quality of leather, they were the best he had ever made me. Very important lines. Please make a note of it, because I will be coming back to it later. And in the mouth of one of the town walking boots, I found his bill. So for the first time, unlike earlier where he wouldn't really care about whether the money was paid on time or not, this time he had actually left his bill in one of the boots. The amount was same as usual, but it gave me quite a shock. He had never sent it till quarter day. I flew downstairs and wrote a check and posted it at once with my own hand. So he also ensured, the narrator, that he would send him the check almost immediately. A week later, passing the little street, I thought I would go in and tell him how splendidly the new boots fitted. And when I came to where his shop had been, his name was gone. Half the shop was gone earlier, now the second half was also gone. Still there in the window were the slim pumps, the patent leathers with cloth tops, the suiting riding boots. They were still there because there was still good advertisement even for the new shop owners, because they were such an exquisite piece of workmanship. I went in with very much disturbed. In the two little shops, again made into one, was a young man with an English face. Mr. Gessler in, I said. He gave me a strange, ingratiating look. Ingratiating essentially means someone intending to seek your approval, right? No, sir, he said, no, but we can attend to anything with pleasure. We have taken the shop over. You have seen our name, no doubt, next door. We make for some very good people. So he's immediately advertising himself. You look at it, you know, he says, he is not talking about his work or the quality of work first. He is talking about the fact that they make for some very good people. So thereby, by extension, you should also order your boots from us. So in that sense, that's the difference. Whereas the younger Mr. Gessler would always talk about the quality of his work and about the pride that he would take in manufacturing, in making those boots. Yes, or rather crafting those boots. Yes, yes, I said, Mr. Gessler. Oh, he's dead. Dead? But I received these boots only from him last Wednesday week. Ah, a shocking go. Poor old man starved himself. Good God. Slow starvation, the doctor called it. You see, he went to work in such a way, would keep the shop on, wouldn't have a soul touch his boots except himself. When he got an order, it took him such a time, people won't wait. He lost everybody, and there he would sit going on and on. I will say that for him, not a man in London made a better boot. Again, an important line, right? So finally, someone apart from the narrator is also actually talking good about his boot. Not a man in London made a better boot. So despite the fact that he made the best boots in London, yet starvation was the way his end actually came. And that's a very, very sad kind of a state of affairs. But look at the competition. He never advertised. Would have the best leather too and do it all himself. Well, there it is. What could you expect with his ideas? So basically, the new owner admired the work of Mr. Gessler, but he suggests that he should have changed with the times, right? And he says even making the best boots could not save his life, and there is an important lesson there. But starvation, I mean, he's shocked at the fact that he could be starved to death. Well, that may be a bit flowery. So he says, okay, that may be a little bit of an exaggeration in the manner in which he put it. But as the saying says is, but I know myself, he was sitting over his boots day and night to the very last. You see, I used to watch him because they were now part of the same complex. Never gave himself time to eat, never had a penny in the house. All went in rent and leather. How he lived so long, I don't know. He regularly let his fire go out, which essentially means that the fire which would be needed to keep himself warm, even that would go out because obviously he needed money to buy the firewood. He regularly let his fire go out. He was a character, but he made good boots. So again reinforcing the fact that he made good boots, but what use was it when it could not save his life? Yes, I said, he made good boots. And I turned and went out quickly, for I did not want that youth to know that I could hardly see. Now, what does that mean? Because there were tears welling up in his eyes, and he did not want that particular person, the new shop owner, to see that he was choking up, that he was getting very, very emotional about the loss of his old friend, right? Now, let's now look at the critical points. But before that, I'll just go through if there are any other things which you need to kind of know about. But I think I have explained the story in great detail. So I am assuming that you would have understood the story very well, right? Let's just go through the main critical analysis points, right? Basically, the story is about the extinction of a craft in the age of advertising, in the age of marketing, right? Because advertising is often showcasing something which you may not entirely have. Advertising is often about 60% fact, about 40% fiction. Of course, if you are a bad quality person, it could be just 20% fact and 80% fiction. Yet, you had these two brothers who would actually not boast or not advertise about what they really had. The story, as I said, is written in a first person narrative. The narrator also grows old along with the two brothers, but obviously is much younger than the two Gessler brothers. So in that sense, it's a story of a journey of a lifetime, right? And what you need in a journey, what you essentially need in a journey is footwear, right? So you understand the symbolic representation. He could have used any other trait in order to make the same point, but the fact that he used footwear, the fact that he used shoes, the fact that he used boots to convey the point, also a very deeper meaning in itself. So the boots are in that sense symbolic of the passage of time and a lifetime of quality work, while contrasting it with the big heartless industry outside that does not really have the heart to acknowledge and appreciate and take care of quality workmanship. Now the two brothers did not compromise on quality and craftsmanship, but the point that is being made that it is a quality that is fast becoming very rare. In fact, at the end of the story, it's becoming extinct, especially when the industry at large is kind of indulging in mass production. Now, the other theme in this particular story is one of extreme commitment to the craft, because every time the narrator comes, he kind of checks his shoes, his boots, and he wants to say, okay, does it hurt here? And he says that this is made of fine Russia leather. So in that sense, there is a commitment to the craft that he was part of. And there is also a sense of empathy, and that is symbolized by the narrator to an extent, even by Mr. Gessler, the younger Mr. Gessler, who is very concerned about the comfort factor of the boots. But as far as the narrator, the fact that he makes it a point to send the bill amount immediately, the fact that he orders 3 boots instead of 2, the fact that he orders boots even though he knows that they are more than what he needs in order to help Mr. Gessler, it shows a sense of empathy which is very heartwarming, right? There is also the other theme is that of the sense of loss, which I have kind of explained through the particular story in both parts, because it's not just about the death of 2 individuals who are fine shoemakers. It's also conveying the passing away of this quality, the quality of craftsmanship, the quality of reaching out and being able to produce this quality of work, even that has kind of passed on. So when you get a question on the title of the story, which we will kind of go into immediately after this, you need to include these points and use words like sole of boot, tip tap of bar slippers. Please use these phrases in your answers. Now, customized made boots versus the boots made by the industry, the mass production. It's almost like in India you have the argument between handloom versus powerloom. Now, handloom is something which is handmade, takes more time, is more expensive, whereas powerloom is kind of mass production. So, in that sense, the capitalist market relies more on advertising, as Mr. Gessler says, instead of quality, whereas his boots focus more, emphasize more on quality rather than on advertising. Now, it's also the new shop owners who talk about themselves immediately, they may not produce the same quality, but they have the quality of advertising that we make shoes for the royal family, and that's something very important. The Gessler brothers, in contrast, fail to kind of appeal to this rather consumerist market. That's another point that you need to make. So in that sense, the loss of a part of his shop and later the entire shop is a sign of the compromise, at least immediately after before the elder brother passes away. The fact that you have to sell off half the shop is a sign of the compromise that the Gessler brothers had to do in order to continue with their life. No longer could they hold on to what they actually owned unless they actually compromised in terms of going in for advertising, something which he did not want to do. And remember, all this is also the aftermath of the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and the 19th century in England. What is the effect of that in the 20th, in the earlier part of the 20th century on people like the Gessler brothers, what effect has it had on them. Now, one critic, and this was an important point that I found in one of the essays, that they have described Gessler as an anti-hero, an anti-establishment hero, who refuses to do mass production, who refuses to do advertising, who says that I will do only customized boots, even though he could have actually saved himself, his trade, and even his elder brother if he had actually made some changes to his trade. So, perfection is what his dharma is. That's what his mantra is. That's what he would really do, even if at the end it leads to his being perished. So, the last 4 boots, and that's what I told you, that line particular that I said that they were the best he had ever made me. So, the last 4 boots are almost like a swan song of sorts. So, the last 4 boots that he makes before he dies are the best that he makes, and he leaves them for the narrator, the best quality boots that he ever made. Now, the story is also, another theme of the story is the friction, or shall I say the battle between quality and consumerism, right, as symbolized by the new shop. The other failure of Gessler, what does it symbolize? You could get that kind of a question, because he wanted his boots to actually do the talking for him, and it did, at least as far as this narrator was concerned, but they could actually only cater to a very limited clientele, because his boots were of such good quality that if I bought a pair of boots from him today, I probably will not go to him for years at end, because they were of such good quality that they lasted for a very long time. The fact that he produced the best quality actually became a negative for him. If he had produced inferior quality, it's quite possible that people would end up coming to his shop many times over to buy shoes many times over, but his quality was so good that people did not need to invest in new shoes, new boots. So, in that sense, the death by starvation, at least how the new shop owner described it, also means a sense of, the failure of fellow human beings to come to the rescue of another human being, right? The new owners knew his state of affairs. They knew that, he did not even regularly let his fire go out, right? But in that sense, they did not make an effort to actually save him somehow. So, in that sense, it's a very pessimistic story where quality does not triumph at the end. I made that point about handloom versus powerloom. So, it's also the story of manual labor versus mechanization. The other point that you need to remember is that Mr. Gessler and his brother die, but they both leave their imprint, right? Or rather, I would say footprint would be a more appropriate word in the world of quality footwear. The other point that you need to remember is that his integrity, the fact that he offers a full refund for boots that creaked of this particular narrator, because he believes the customer that the customer will always say the right thing. We have also, because of the kind of words that have been used, we know about the fact that, the narrator is almost describing him as an artist of sort. And finally, of course, the justification of the title, because the whole story revolves around the theme of quality, the work of art that every boot is. Now, when you are talking about what are the kind of questions you could get a character sketch of Mr. Gessler. That's very important. You could be asked to justify the title. Now, when you're talking about the character sketch, you need to bring out all these themes, talk about a quote from the story, talk about the fact that what kind of a person he is, what kind of pride he actually took in the kind of work that he did. As far as the story, the title of the story is concerned, the emphasis on quality versus advertising, bring in the fact about the new shop, what is their work ethos, what is the kind of qualities that they are bringing to the table as opposed to what Mr. Gessler and his brother did. So, you need to talk about the effect of the Industrial Revolution that I spoke about. All these aspects ensure that you are able to write in a very comprehensive answer, because only then you will get your 15 or 20 marks, whatever be the marks distribution be in an English literature ISC paper. So, that's as far as this story Quality by John Galsworthy is concerned. I hope you have understood both explanation videos well, and I do hope you will do well in the examination. Thank you very much for watching.